In reality, why do we resemble our parents? For many generations, humanity has noticed that traits, both in plants, humans, and other animals, are passed from one generation to another, meaning they are inherited. Many of these traits can be directly identified from the parents, but there were others that seem to skip a generation or be present in some uncle or aunt. How is this possible? Furthermore, if all siblings in a family come from the same parents, why are they not all identical? Even though humans had been able to intuit the mechanisms of inheritance enough to use them in agriculture and animal husbandry, for a long time, it wasn't clearly understood how they worked. It was not until the year 1865 when the Austrian monk Gregor Johann Mendel, through his rigorous study of pea plant crosses, decided to unravel these mysteries. He understood that traits were inherited through discrete units of inheritance, which we now know as genes, and later discovered that they are encoded in our DNA. These genes often come with their variations or alleles. In his experiments, Mendel worked with 7 different genes, each having 2 alleles. For instance, the flower color gene had the purple and white alleles. Both in peas and in humans, each gene is inherited in pairs since we receive one copy from each of our parents. The total combination of specific alleles is called the genotype. The genotype interacts with the environment and is expressed in a series of specific characteristics known as the phenotype. Mendel realized that when genotypes were formed, certain alleles seemed to be more assertive or outgoing, preferring to express themselves in the presence of others. These were referred to as dominant alleles, while the more timid ones were called recessive alleles. He made this discovery by crossing pea plants with purple flowers and others with white flowers. He observed that all the offspring had purple flowers, but when he bred the descendants, white flowers reappeared in 1 out of every 4 grandchildren. In this case, the dominant phenotype was that of the purple flower. All individuals in the first generation had 1 copy of the dominant allele and 1 copy of the recessive allele, with the white flower trait being hidden in the genotype. Upon further reproduction, the second generation exhibited all possible genotypes. But what does this have to do with resembling our parents? Genetically, we are equally similar to both of our parents, as we inherit the same amount of DNA from each of them. However, certain traits dominate over others, and it is more likely that they will be displayed in your children or grandchildren. Mendel's laws explain why there are characteristics that seem to skip a generation, like when someone tells you that you resemble your grandfather or aunt. This occurs when both parents have at least 1 copy of the recessive gene, which can be hidden or not expressed. For example, both of your parents may have black hair, but you were born with blonde hair, resembling a grandparent or an uncle. This is because both of your parents inherited an allele for blonde hair, but since it is recessive, it remained hidden in their genotype as they also inherited the dominant allele for black hair from the other grandparent. This phenomenon is observed in many genetic diseases, such as color blindness. Even though they are not very common, recessive alleles can persist hidden for several generations, only to be revealed when both parents have the recessive genes. And things can get even more complicated. Eye color is a trait defined by 2 different genes. Let's call one gene brownness and the other greenness. The first one has the alleles brown yes dominant, and brown no recessive. The same goes for greenness. However, brown is dominant over green, so for the green eye phenotype to be expressed, the individual must have 2 recessive alleles for the brownness gene. The only way for the light eye color to appear is if both recessive alleles for brownness and greenness genes coincide. And this happens with many other traits that depend on one or a combination of alleles from various genes: your skin color, nose shape, eye shape, eyelash length, freckles, ear shape, whether you are right-handed or left-handed, predisposition to certain diseases, and even sensitivity to certain flavors. The number of possible combinations is astronomical, which is why we are all different. By the way, do you have doubts about whether you will go bald? You can find the answer by looking at your maternal grandfather. That's right, in him. If he is already bald, it's very likely that you will inherit it too. Thanks, Grandpa. It turns out that the gene responsible for hair loss is found on your X chromosome, and XY men inevitably inherit it from their mother. The father contributes his Y chromosome. If your mother doesn't show signs of baldness, even if her dad is bald, it's because she has another set of X chromosomes as a backup. For a woman to develop early baldness, she must inherit the gene from both sides. It's also possible that you inherit that X chromosome from your grandmother, but for the same reason, it's more complicated to figure out. If you like the video, give it a thumbs up, share it, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to comment if you want us to talk about a specific topic.